Hey everybody, thanks for joining me again for yet another song in my Allan Holdsworth lesson series. I'm getting close to the end. I think I only have maybe about 9 or 10 songs left to do that I think would be really good lessons. I might add some here and there in the future, but we're getting close to the end, so I hope you've enjoyed all the ones that we've been doing so far. So today I decided to do Looking Glass, which is a song that Allan has actually played quite a few times in his career. He started playing the song I think in 1986 and kept playing it for almost 20 years. And because of this, the song was actually on the Synthaxe and it was tuned in fifths, it went through a bunch of different changes and different little variations. So I'll talk about those here and there. But this song is actually, it's not too bad, I don't think, because there's like a large section of chords, but there's a lot of repeating in there. So if you're down for the challenge, this might be a pretty good one to sort of get to that next step for playing Allan material. So anyway, here it is, Looking Glass. So as I just said before, this song actually started out tuned in fifths, which is kind of interesting because there aren't too many songs that Allan played like that. But for whatever reason, he felt that this song, he wanted to keep on playing it and was able to switch and learn how to play the song from fifths tuning to standard guitar, which is why some of the chords themselves are a little unusual. So it's a bit of a misnomer if anyone's really not that familiar with the song, that like Allan didn't really choose this voicing on the guitar. The voicing on the Synthaxe is actually something like this, I think, if it was tuned in fifths. But if you take those notes and you try to play them on standard, you get something like this. And usually for Allan songs that are tuned in fifths, on the bottom register of the chords, you'll see a lot of fifths and sixths being played, which is what you'll see a lot in this song. You'll see a lot of like fifth intervals on in the bass. So I remember when I first learned the song, this was like one of the first Allan songs I actually wanted to learn. I learned it from this. Anyone probably has this book, which is a pretty good transcription of it. I got this book when 2007 when I was working at Sam Ash. Interesting is that you can actually find Allan play at that very Sam Ash on YouTube if you look for it. I work at that store. Not right now because of this whole craziness. But so this song has a lot of little weird kind of chords in them, and it's because it's in fifths tuning. And then when Allan adopted that fifths tuning to standard, he then changed it a little bit more, even more so, because of I guess some oversights when trying to transpose it to a different tuning. Some of the notes could be played easier in different areas, so I'll talk about all that stuff. So to me there's 3 parts of the song. There's like the verse sort of section, or like the A section, that has 2 different endings. And the first ending happens only in the beginning of the song. Every other time and all the other times that part is transposed, it plays the second ending. Then there's like a little bridge part, which is like the B section, and then the solo section. And also, my friend Livio found this and tagged me on it a while ago. There was a screenshot of Allan's chord chart. So I'll be able to use Allan's, not chord chart, a scale chart, but I'll be able to use that scale chart and show you what Allan's thinking about in the solo section, which is nice. So the first chord, and I'm sure you've all seen this, a lot of people have done instructional videos of this. The first chord everyone gets right. It's a little unusual because you're playing the bottom 2 strings and the top 2 strings. Like I said, if it was in fifths tuning, Allan's actually playing them all on the top 4 strings, but because the fifths tunings, the range of the guitar is so much wider that it's got to be wider in standard tuning. So you've got this D power chord on the bottom, and then you've got this 4 on the top, and then the 9. So I would actually call this like a sus4 add 9, and we've seen that chord used plenty of other times in other Allan songs. And then you actually take this chord and you play it diatonically, so to I think G major. So this would be like our 5 chord in G major, and then it goes to our 4 chord in G major, because now you're playing a C and a D, but now you have an F sharp, which is your sharp 11, and you're a 9. So now this would be like, and I said this in other videos, I wish you can call like a sus sharp 11 add 9. but it's probably better to call it like a sus2 add sharp 11, which goes against the grain for what we just called this chord as a sus4 add 9. Or maybe like a sus2, you can maybe call this like a D sus2 add 11, and this is a C sus2 add sharp 11. Then it goes up to E with the same chord as you played the first time. So now you have this E add 9 sus4 chord, or like I said, you can call it a E sus4 add 11. And that's really the only time you see those shapes, are right in the beginning of that head section. Then you go to this. Now you have another sus2 here. You're playing this F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp, which is F sharp sus2, and you're adding in an E on the top. So now you're playing between the E, the A and the D string, and the B and the E string. So I would call this a 7 sus2, F sharp 7 sus2, and then you sort of keep that shape going down. I think it's easier to replace my third finger here with my second, but once again you have an E sus2, and you're adding in the major 7 on the top, the D sharp, and then you settle on an E flat E flat 7 sus2. Then with this, and this is what I've said in other Allan videos, he likes to do this pedal point thing where the top note is sort of pinned down and the chord underneath it shifts up and down, and that happens a couple of times in this song. So Allan plays his E flat sus2 with the D flat on top. You move that, so I would call this a 7 sus2, E flat 7 sus2, and then you move that E flat to E sus2 while still keeping that C sharp, so now you have a 6 sus2, and then you move that E to F sus2 with the flat, which now would be the flat 13, or the 6, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, I was right, flat 13. And then that moves back down again. And then from here you keep that same E flat 7 sus2, but now instead of playing the 2, you add your middle finger and you're playing the minor third. So what we have right now is this. And that's exactly like how it goes in the fifths tuning, because I also transcribed it in fifths tuning. Then after that, famously, we have sort of those really wide chords. This one, you can think of this chord as two different ways. If you think of it as A flat as being your root, we have an A flat, and then we have the sharp 5, the minor third, and then the 7. So this is like an A flat minor 7, sharp 5. But also you can think of any of those 7 sharp 5 chords as add 9 chords. So you can also think of this as an add 9 chord as well. I think you call this what add 9 chord would this be? Probably a B, an E add 9, because you have a E major here, and then you have the 9 on the top. And then you move this chord down to this, which I would consider an E major 9, because Allan, in his instruction video where he also plays this tune, he plays this E major 9 chord. But now if you take your middle finger, instead of playing a B on it, you play an F sharp, you're adding in the 9. So I think the best way to probably call this chord, to me, is a E major 9, with the 9 being on the bottom. And then we switch to this chord, which we've seen before as a major 7. This is like a C sharp major 7. There's like a cool way of playing it. But because of the way that this part goes, I'm actually going to call this an F minor with the flat 13. So all major 7 chords can be thought of as minor chords with an added flat 13 in a different inversion. It's kind of what's happening here, because what's happening is you take that minor triad and you're once again moving that up and down while keeping this D flat in the same spot. So here we have an F minor with the flat 13, F sharp minor 7, because now that flat 13 becomes just a regular 5. And now this is what's interesting. On the record, Allan moves this minor triad up and down like that while keeping that C sharp up there. But what happens is, when he plays this song live, he alters that part a little bit. What he ends up doing is he just plays the top 2 notes and doesn't play the bottom 2 notes, which actually be a G and a D. So you can play it like this. I actually like to play it with a bar, and then actually I'm barring between the 10th and 9th fret. Allan doesn't do that. But Allan, when he's playing it, he'll keep his finger in the same spot, and sometimes he does play the F sharp, but it's not that often. Most of the time he just does this. Or he'll just do, and then play the full chord. So that part's a little bit weird, but if you want to play it like the record, it's F minor with the flat 13, F minor 7, and then G minor with the flat 5 with really the sharp 11. And you can play it like this, or you can play it by switching out all of your fingers and then using your first. I think this is much trickier than just, sorry. And then it goes back down, and then it settles on an E minor with the 6. So that's that beginning part. There's a little second half to that, and I'll show you it now. So I'll play to what we have so far. As I said, you can treat that other part a little bit differently. You can either play the G minor with the sharp 11 on the top, or you can just play the top 2 notes there. Of course, it depends how Allan's playing it. If he's playing with the bass player or keyboard player, they're usually supplying that, so he just has to do the top half of that. So from there, that is pretty much identical to how the song actually goes on the record in 5th tuning. This is where it switches a little bit from the record. So the next 2 chords are, so we actually have another, what I would consider, it's a E flat minor 7 sharp 5, because we have an E minor 7, and then we're using the sharp 5 here. Of course, as I said, all these minor 7 sharp 5 chords you can also think of as add 9 chords, but here it's mostly, to me, it's voiced in a way where it really looks like a minor 7 sharp 5. So it's E flat minor 7 sharp 5 to D flat minor 7 sharp 5. That part's identical to the record. This next chord on the record is a little bit different because the bass note keeps on going lower, but because that would be impossible to play because the range of the guitar doesn't go that low and it would be hard to reach, Allan alters that part a little bit. So after those 2 chords, Allan just plays a regular F sharp minor 7, although it actually should be an F sharp minor 7 sharp 5, I think, but the bass note's going to be different. So anyway, live he just plays it as F sharp minor 7. And here's another thing that Allan does a little bit different. So I think he used the Synthaxe in 5th tuning to play the song up until I think maybe 1990. Then he started to use a double neck, where one neck of the guitar was tuned in 5ths and then the other guitar was tuned in standard. So he would play the chord part on the one neck and then solo on the other. And you've probably seen that in live videos. You'll see that he did it for Non-Brewed Condiment, Spear of Innocence, and this song. But then in about 1991, maybe 92, he switched to actually playing this with in standard guitar. So he took that 5th tuning and switched it to 4ths. So I think early performances on this in standard, he actually plays this, and you also see this on the instructional video, he plays this part in a much more difficult way than he had done later in his career. I think towards the 2000s he actually changed it to an easier physical way of playing it. And you'll see, it's just an oversight, just one of those like, oh, why didn't I see that kind of thing. So after this F sharp minor 7, on the early versions, Allan actually plays this chord, which is really just a B minor 7 with the, B minor 7 sharp 5, because now you're playing the G on the G on the 12th fret, and then you play this. So that Allan actually plays this. This would be like an A sus2 with the flat 7. But eventually Allan switched that, and what I find easier is that he just plays a minor 7 on the top, B minor 7, and then just plays the A7 sus2 like this, like he did in other songs. And then from this point on, Allan plays the chords the same way, because then you have a G major 7 sus2, and then F sharp 7, and then F sharp dominant, F sharp minor 7, and then E minor 7. So we have something like this. That section to me is actually pretty easy, and what's surprising if you watch a lot of live videos, Allan seems to struggle with that part. He sometimes misses it. I'm not quite sure why. It seems pretty simple compared to the rest of the song. So this part over here is the first ending, starting with the B minor 7, A7 sus2, G major 7 sus2, F sharp minor 7, E minor 7. Then that whole chord part repeats, but now what we just played at B minor 7 gets transposed up a whole step to C sharp. So I'll just play through the second verse, or the second A section really quickly. And then it goes to C sharp minor 7 to B7 sus2, A major 7, A major 7 sus2, A flat dominant 7 or G sharp, I keep on saying dominant 7, G sharp minor 7, and then ends on F sharp minor 7. And everything I said before about Allan playing those chords a little bit differently also rings true there. Those chords get moved up a whole step. But that last ending that we just played, every time that we play that part now in the song, uses that ending, whether it's transposed up or back down again. So after this section, it goes into what I thought of as like the bridge sort of section. So I'll talk about those chords here now. Now for this section, it's kind of interesting to see how Allan chose what type of finger placements to use for some of these chords, because he's switching from fifths tuning to learning it on standard guitar. And what's interesting is that some of these chords can be played in different ways in what I would actually think of would be easier. I'm a little bit more comfortable with playing it the way Allan played them, but I'll give you those options if you want to try to play them like that as well. So the first chord is this G, we have this G sus2, but now we're adding in the sharp 11. And that chord can also be played like this, just like we'll see a little bit later in this section, which is interesting that Allan didn't choose this way, because it also lends itself to the next chord pretty easy. So the first chord is this G sus2 sharp 11 to an F sharp minor, add 11. We have the F sharp minor triad with the 11. This kind of voicing is also the same thing that you'd find in House of Mirrors. Same voicing, but now instead of playing the root on the low E string, we're playing it on the A string. But also that voicing can be played with an F sharp minor triad here, and then you're adding the 11 on the B string. So we would have this. Pretty much retaining that your pinky on the on this A. Then it goes to D sus2 add sharp 11. But that same voicing as before, so that means this one will work. And then we go to this B major that Allan likes to hammer on the major third to the 4. And now these chords that I had just played are identical to the record in fifths tuning, but then when we get to this chord, it's a little bit different. It's still a B major, but there's some extra notes that are being added on the bottom. And what's interesting is that if you want to add those notes, all you have to do is, instead of bar from the D string up, you bar from the A string up. And then you're just going to add this C sharp and F sharp. It's hard to tell, but those notes are definitely in there. The note that Allan's also playing is lower than this. I think is it an extra F sharp? It might be an E. But you can't really obviously reach that for all the other chords, because that voicing happens later in the chord in the song, just higher up. So Allan just sticks with this regular B major, or this major shape. But if you want to add those notes, you can, because it's simple to do. Then we go to that C sus2 add sharp 11. And this time Allan actually uses he's barring with his first finger. He's actually playing it like this, which I've said in other videos. So the F sharp and G are ringing out at the same time. But what's interesting, again, is on the record version, Allan actually doesn't let those two notes ring out. He actually plays an F sharp and then moves up to G. So if you want to replicate that a little bit easier, you can also use that same sus2 sharp 11 chord, that voicing, but you can move it down here, but now utilize the open G string, and then just move your F sharp to G on the top, like that. So I'll play what we have so far. And then from there, you play this G major on the top. Now that little bass motif that I was saying doesn't happen here, but the bass is playing an A, I believe, so you're right there with your first finger. If you want to make it a little more accurate, you can just add the A with your thumb. Then the next chord is just like the record. It's the E. The first chord in the song just moved up to E, which also appears at the beginning of the song. So you got this E, add 9 sus4, or add 11, and then, sorry, I just played that other part. There we go. Now you have just a regular E major. And of course Allan likes to hammer on the major third to the 4. So this is what that whole section sounds like. Then it starts off the same way, but now you're transposed down a whole step. So now it's an F sus2 with an add sharp 11, and now D major, and you're adding in the you hammer on the 11. Once again, you can play that F like this, and then you can play D. And on the record in fifths tuning, you have that bass motif again. So you can add in the E and the A here. And then it goes to C sus2 with the add sharp 11, which I said you can also play open. And then from here it plays the second ending of the A section down from D to A. So I believe that's down a fourth. And it's the same exact voicing, same exact everything. It's just now transposed. So I'll talk about those chords here just really briefly, and then we'll move on to the solo section. So as I just said before, the first part of this video, that verse section, or that A section, has two endings. Allan plays the second ending here, and also after the solo, both parts are that second section, that second ending again. So instead of playing it now from D to C, we're playing it from A to G. And actually the only difference here is for this part, Allan actually takes his third finger. This happens a little bit more later in his career, his later gigs, is that he actually will move the D here to a C sharp. So you have two C sharps and then play an open D, just as a little variation. Just like that. this is where the song gets really tricky with the voicing, because now you're playing it so low, the frets are so far away. As you can see, I'm really using the side of my fingers, and even coming from this sus2 sharp 11 to playing this chord is really challenging. So, but once again, don't really try. I remember when I first learned this, I could not understand how Allan was doing this, because I'm going back to like 2013 or something, 2013, 2014, and I'm trying to figure out how this is being played, and I'm looking at Allan's hand, and I'm trying to play it like him without realizing you just take the lazy way and just sort of play with the side of your finger. Same thing here, it's just you got to stretch a little bit further and just grabbing this chord, really getting this power chord down with your second and third fingers, what's really challenging. Now everything's the same. Once again, really challenging with this voicing and the major 9. As you can see, I'm like twisting my arm this way because my pinky can't reach, but I'm like bringing in my third finger. I'm watching the viewfinder like this. I can't reach this. So I'm twisting my hand and bending my third finger in. So I'm using like this part of my third finger to play that note, not the top of it. Let's take it from the top. Second ending. That's it. And then we go on to the solo section. So luckily someone took a picture of Allan's chart for it, so I'll go through the chords and the harmony of the solo section and how Allan is viewing them. So a while ago, my friend Livio found this picture of somebody who uploaded a photo of Allan's chart for the song. It looks like this. So it's a little blurry and hard to see, so what I do is I cleaned it up, and I got this. And I'll be using this in order to teach it to you so you can understand sort of what's going on. So I'll just play through some of the chords and tell you how Allan's thinking of what scale to use over those chords because of the scale chart. So the first one is EX, and of course if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that X means Dorian. So the first thing is E Dorian, and then you have that little dash. Now that dash doesn't really tell you for how long to play. It's, I guess, for Allan to say for a while, you know, keep on playing until the chord changes. So it's actually 4 measures where he's thinking of E Dorian, but the problem is there's no real chord that's associated with this in terms of you're not playing over one static chord. And I've talked about this in Letters of Mark, where there's an entire section where you're just playing sort of diatonically within one key. In this instance it would be D major or E Dorian. So I had mentioned like Allan would do something like this. I could put like a little F sharp minor to G major to B major kind of thing, like. You can even do like a D major, E minor. But there's also something else that you can do that Allan does pretty frequently, and it's kind of interesting to see how he thinks of harmony sort of diatonically. What he'll do is he'll play like the triads on the top strings, but then add a different bass note on the bottom. So he'll do something like this. This is all diatonic to D major. Like E minor with an 11 on the bottom, F sharp minor with an 11 on the bottom, G major with the 9 now, not the 11, but the 9 in the bass, and you're pretty much just using your third finger on the, it's not going to lift from the B string. G major with the 9, A major with the 9, B minor with the 11, the C diminished with the flat 9 if you want to call it that, and then finally D major with the 9 in the bass. So you could do something with the, like, he does something like that pretty often in these kind of broad sections. So anyway, it's 4 measures of that, and then it goes to this chord, which is an A major with a B in the bass. So I would think of this as a B9 sus4, and Allan wrote A major. So if you think of the A major over this, it's sort of got like a B Dorian sound. Even though you're not playing a minor third, the scale is implying that. So this has got like a B Dorian sound. Then it goes to this A flat minor 9, one of Allan's favorite voicing, just like we've seen in Pudwood and House of Mirrors. But this time you're using the open string, the open B, as your minor third, and then you're playing the rest of the notes, you're actually fretting them. So in this case, on the lead sheet, Allan wrote A flat X, or A flat Dorian. So over this chord, you're basically giving it a flat Dorian sound. And then the next chord is this. So like this F sharp 7 sus4. This is another one where there's a little bit more free improv in here. You're not really always stuck with this chord. And you can see it's B with that dash. It's because this is being played for over 2 measures, well, just for 2 measures. And if you're thinking B major, this has got like an F sharp mixolydian sound over it, over this particular chord, for 2 measures. Then Allan once again goes to his favorite E flat, or just his favorite minor 9 voicing for E flat minor 9. And he wrote A flat X. And then A flat X is really going to give it A flat Dorian is the same thing as G flat major, which this sounds like E flat Aeolian. And then the next chord, the E with the 2 circles, I don't know if we've done it before. I think maybe in Tokyo Dream I talked about it. That means the diminished scale, the half whole diminished scale. So over this particular chord, that's what Allan's playing over, and we basically have an E major with the F in the bass. Which, if you want to think of F as your root, you can think of it as a F minor major 7 with the sharp 11. Or if you think of it as E, like an E major with the flat 9 in the bass. And if you look at the half whole diminished scale, you have E, F, G, G sharp, B flat, and B. So you have E major with the flat 9. And what's interesting is, like, if you see this chord, if I'm thinking of major with the flat 9, my first instinct goes to Phrygian dominant. But this is why having Allan's lead sheet helps out a lot, because it shows you how he's interpreting these chords. Sometimes they're not very obvious, and you can only tell by either his scale chart or his actual phrasing when he's playing over it. Then after that, we go back to 4 measures of E Dorian, again, just playing whatever it is you want diatonically inside that key. And then we finally go to B major, but Allan's playing A flat minor 9 voicing, and he's got B written out. So here's B, so this is like this flat 6 away, so he's now treating this like A flat Aeolian. Then you take that minor 9 voicing, move it up to E flat minor 9, and Allan wrote A flat X. So that gives it a E flat minor sound, E flat Aeolian, this we just talked about. And then the next chord is D flat minor 9, same voicing, and Allan wrote B major over it. Now interpreting this chord as D flat Dorian, or C sharp Dorian from B major. And then the next chord is this. It's sort of like the E minor with the flat 13 that we talked about earlier. But I would see this as C major 7, and Allan wrote A Dorian. A Dorian belongs to G major, so this is like treating it as C Lydian. So that whole section sort of sounds like this so far. We get the 4 measures of E Dorian, and then back to the 4 measures of E Dorian. Then now the next section, this is kind of what's interesting, because when you look at this, you sort of can think of the scales as one way, but what Allan wrote was something a little bit different. So the chord progression is like this. So that first chord, you have a flat major 7 sus2, and then, or you think of it as an E flat major with the add 11, and then you move that to down a half step, and now you have a first inversion E flat major. So I would think of this as like a 4-to-1, and then that happens again in B flat. So I would think, oh, another 4-to-1, and then you got that same chord again, and then to your B flat 9 sus4, so I'm thinking, oh, this belongs to A flat major, and then finally this F add 9, F add 9 sus4 to F major add 9. So over that I'd be thinking, oh, E major, E flat major, B flat major, to A flat major, and then, I'm sorry. But what Allan wrote was something a little bit different. Start off the same way. He's got FX with 3 lines. So the first FX really means over this whole thing F Dorian or E flat major, is basically what I would interpret it as. But then instead of going to B flat major over this, you're still playing F Dorian, because you're now playing an E flat major 7 sus2. So he's treating this as like E Ionian or E major. And then when you finally move that note down a half step and play that first inversion B flat major chord, Allan wrote B flat or C Dorian over that, depending on how he, what scale he wants to choose, even though they're the same. So over this, he's now playing B flat major, and then over the next chord, the D flat major 7, sus2. He's got B flat Dorian, which belongs to A flat major, so this is like a D flat Lydian sound. Then over this chord, B flat major, B flat 9 sus4, Allan wrote F Dorian, which is E flat major, and B flat being our 5, this is like a B flat Mixolydian sound, and then F over that. But what's interesting, he wrote, it's kind of hard to see in the picture, but I think that's an F7 over a CX, 2 different ways of interpreting this scale. I don't know if it's over just the second, it's F major here, and then F7 or C Dorian over this, both belonging to B flat major, or just like a different way of interpreting it. Of course, that's up to your own interpretation as well, but I've seen Allan actually play C Dorian shape over this last section. And then there's these 3 little extra chords at the end. And that's what the 3 little solo section, 3 little scale sections are on the bottom. The first chord is a G flat major 7 sus2, and Allan's got E flat Dorian or D flat major, so this is like a F sharp Lydian sound. Then the next chord is this E flat major with the G flat in the bass. You can also play it in a more traditional Allan way, where you're barring with your pinky. This is also like in Pud Wud. So this is like an A flat major 7 sus2, but Allan plays it this way, where he's using his first finger to bar, and his middle finger is on A flat. Allan wrote E flat major or F Dorian, F Dorian, which belongs to E flat major. So this sounds like A flat Lydian. And then the last chord is D flat major 7 sus2, which also belongs to A flat major. So this is, and that's what Allan wrote, B flat Dorian or A flat major. So this has a D flat Lydian sound, and then back to just loop around again. So that ending section sounds like this. And what's interesting is while Allan's playing that, thinking of it as E flat, E Dorian, that I think the bass is playing an A, so it really gives it more like an A Mixolydian sound. And that's what Steve and Allan solo over. What's interesting is that they don't always stop and start at the same spot. Allan sometimes will start the solo over again in that E flat, I keep on saying E flat, E Dorian section in the beginning, and then sort of stop soloing midway sort of through that first line, and then Steve would take over. So if you're wondering now why I'm wearing a different shirt and everything looks a little bit different, because I decided to delete the original video and re-upload a new one. So it turns out my friend Livio, thank you again for pointing this out and watching the whole video at the end, sent me this message. It turns out that I transposed something a little bit later in the song in the wrong spot. I'll talk about that when I get to this, to that section. So now this part is only unique to when Allan is playing the song in fifths tuning whether it's with the Synthaxe or with the double neck, at the very end of the guitar solo, when that melody is being played to sort of signal the end of the guitar solo, whether it's on guitar, like on the record, or on keyboards when it's done live, there's this section that Allan plays. When it's just in standard tuning, where it's been done since after, I guess, 1992, it's the same kind of same ending that we just played, but earlier versions and on the record has this little section in it. So this is an approximation of what it would sound like, because I'm not tuned in fifths, but it's basically that B section, but now modulated up a half step. So it should sound something like this. It's just that same section that we played, but a half step up, and that's just during the outro section of the solo, of the last few chords. Then once the solo section is done, it goes back to that sort of second half of the B section. It starts out the same way, with the F sus2 at sharp 11 to D major, C sus2 at sharp 11, and then from here it goes into the same part that we did right before the solo, the verse section, or that head section, modulated down to A. So this is all identical here. Now this is the mistake that I made on the previous video. This time during the modulation, the ending section is the first ending, not the second, but it's the first ending. So the first three chords are the same, but now it's F sharp minor 7 to E7 sus2 to D major 7 sus2 to C sharp minor 7 to B minor 7. Then it repeats the head section identically again. And then this ending has ending 2. So the first repeat that's down in A is ending number 1, and the second part, when it's modulated back up to D, has the second ending. So that's it. That's Looking Glass. Sorry for that little mistake, but sometimes they happen. I'm not perfect, but I appreciate all my friends pointing out all these little things, and I don't take offense to it, because what's important to me is the correct information being out there and for you guys to learn it and understand it, not for anyone's potential ego that I have to be right on everything, because I'm not, and this is a perfect example. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys soon.